I'm the owner here at the Ultimate Aquarium, and today we're going to be going over the quality and quantity of light, and then we're going to progress into something a little more sophisticated, introduction to pigments, photoadaptation, and coral color. The first part of the lecture will probably be somewhat review for a lot of people. There might be some tidbits here that may be helpful for you. So I'll just go ahead and get started.
This is the stuff that you always tell us when we first walk in the store, huh?
Yeah. Okay. We start with natural sunlight. Sunlight can be broken down into its constituent colors via a prism. We've all done that, taken a prism, shine it on the wall. You're left with these colors of the rainbow: violet, blue, green, yellow, orange, and red. To give a measurement, they've assigned a nanometer range to each of the different colors of the rainbow. Starting with violet, blue, to red, to 650. Now, when you put water through light, light is filtered according to the following regimen. For those, anybody a scuba diver here? No? If you're a scuba diver, they often teach you this acronym of Roy G. Biv. It gives you the sequence in which the colors of the rainbow disappear when they're in water, starting with red, orange, yellow, green, blue, indigo, and violet. So in water, the red is the first to go, orange next, yellow, and so on. To demonstrate that, I made a few handouts, and you can pass them on. I think I got enough for just about everybody. If not, have to share it. Those two can share.
Don't share. We'll share it.
Thanks, John.
Two there.
We'll share it.
Bunny, Martin, and then just leave my last one. Here.
Thanks.
I got it. I'll share it.
You held it? You got it. All right.
Okay.
Need a bucket here?
Actually, this is an excerpt from a Jacques Cousteau book. It makes it quite obvious what happens to the colors. You can see here at the surface, just underneath the surface, all the colors of the rainbow are quite visible. You drop down to 15 feet, the red is all but gone. It's left to a little tiny bit of orange. Yellow is still pretty prevalent. The other colors are starting to diminish. By 30 feet, the red is completely, it's just about completely gone. Yellow is still a little prevalent, and the blues are still visible. At 60 feet, the red is completely gone. All you're left with is some yellow and some blue light remaining. So this is a good indication of how light is filtered through water as with increasing depth. Okay.
Why does yellow stay floating all the way through?
The yellow disappears probably a little deeper, about 90 feet to 100 feet. The yellow's gone at that point. Now, if we were to take the colors of the rainbow and put them on a graph, this is what a graph of natural sunlight looks like, going from even the UV to the red. It's, for the most part, a fairly even distribution of the colors of the rainbow. Now, as we've just seen on the handout there, the deeper you go, the bluer the light. What happens to this curve just begins to drop down. So the deeper you go, this section, the yellow, orange, and red section disappears rather quickly. Now, I found in the scientific literature a graph of all the different curves found at different depths of natural sunlight. Unfortunately, my picture's a mess, so I actually found a better handout for everybody. It's a little easier to read. Now we can see graphically how the different colors of the rainbow are filtered out with increasing depth. What you're seeing on the PPFD is photosynthetic photon flux, and it's basically equivalent to PAR. So we also have an idea how PAR disappears with increasing depth. But as you can see, the right-hand part of that curve gets steeper and steeper with increasing depth. Any questions?
Actually, I have a question.
Sure.
In the ocean, what is the normal reef depth? Like in the Caribbean, and we're getting all our SPSs and everything. Does it vary? Is there
Generally, if you're looking at high-colored SPS, you're probably looking at less than 15 feet. Most of the corals are probably 50 feet or less. You're talking some Indonesian divers who don't have scuba gear. They're looking down at 90 feet going, "Hey George, you gonna swim down and get that one?" No. So there's some limitations there.
The light spectrum, realistically, for us, is probably within that range.
Correct. When we choose an artificial light source, we sort of basically have to pick a curve we want to simulate. This curve indicates the depth in the water. So if we wanted to recreate something at, say, 33 feet, that's a 10 meter, that's the yellow graph. So that's the curve we'd be looking for from our artificial light source to duplicate.
Gotcha.
Okay? Now, what I've done is a disclaimer. I had to do these by hand. Maybe not be perfect, so bear with me. I did the best I could. They're blows. These are some examples of the spectral curves of Aquarium bulbs. The old standby's been around since the 60s and 70s, the Rolex fluorescent. You can see this massive peak here in the red. The rest of it's sort of a jumbled mess. This is a Hamilton T5 actinic. The main peak is here at 430 or so. Power compact. Note the spikes. This is rather typical of both the PCs and T5s. This one is an Iwasaki 14K HQI. If you look here on the graph, this is probably a little bit closer to maybe a meter below. You see the same general shape of the curve. Okay, the next, we get into the LEDs. Woo.
No. He's not happy. No.
Now, historically, there's two methods of constructing LEDs. You can do what's called an RGB type, which is you mix a blue, a green, and a red together to sort of give you a white appearance. Then there's the other version, which is much more common now. Not too many people use this anymore. They take a blue LED and they coat it with the yellow phosphor. So we have the blue peak like you would here, and then this big hump here in the yellow, orange, and red. This is typical of the white LEDs, simply because that's the construction of it. Okay. Now, we have some specifics. The Cree series of bulbs, the XRE, the XPG, the XMs, the curve is almost all the same here. You've got a big high peak in the blue and this rather large hump of yellow, orange, and a fair amount of red here. Comparing this to the Kessel, which just has the one peak in the blue, and then the rest of it diminishes out really rather quickly. So we don't have any large bump in the yellow, orange, and red in the spectrum. The Orphic, I covered it up because the advertisements, the press releases Orphic's put out, basically said that our 16,000K is different than the Cree series. There's 16,000K where these goes to 10,000K. It's different design, different construction. It's a different bulb altogether. Drum roll. Hit.
Same
Same thing. As you can see, the peak here may be a little bit less than this one, but for the most part, the general shape of the curve are identical. Yeah, that's one question mark.
With the Kessels?
Yes.
Now, I know that the Krieg and all the other LEDs on the market basically use a plastic lens,
Yeah.
where Kessel uses a glass lens. Do you
Yes.
think that that might be the reason
No, I think we're going to touch more on that probably a little bit later, why this curve exists and this curve exists. And let's see what it was.
Okay, while you're looking, I just
Yeah. Okay.
we all know, and it's been proven,
Uh-huh.
that trees grow coral. So what does it matter if it has that lump or not?
That will all come shortly.
Does that have anything to do with the higher level of red line growing due to Visalia?
Very possibly. We'll also touch more on that as we get into the pigment discussion of our.
We're getting too far ahead of Marc.
Yeah. Once we get into the pigment discussion of our lecture, all will become clear. Okay. You can see we got really a very different curve between the orphic trees. Now this is basically the same format that all the other white LEDs have. Tree was the first one to come out with this type of a spectrum. Yeah. And let's see. I'm saving the Vortex XR30 for a little bit later.
All right.
Oh.
I get a special presentation. Everybody else has to leave.
Back row, special presentation, timeout.
Anyway, okay, other criteria for evaluating light quality. Color temperature, which is used quite extensively in the industry. It's measured in degrees Kelvin. Natural sunlight is 5,500 to 6,000 degrees Kelvin. Lower color temperatures are red and yellow, and higher temps are white to blue. Now the problem with our industry is that they are all controlled by marketing firms, and they have virtually ruined this criteria for everybody. So what happens is, some company comes up with a new bulb and goes, "Hey George, what color temperature do you want to make the new bulb?" 14,256 Print it. It can have no correlation to the curve. This is very important. Color temperature does not denote any specific spectral curve. They can put any number on it they want. There's no rules, regulations, or laws. There's no rules, laws, or regulations. Any number. Pick a number out of a hat and stick it on.
I was on 10K actually, so blue.
Yeah, a good example, if you want to see a good example of this, go up to upstairs. I have two 14K Iwasaki's, and there's a 10K Iwasaki in the middle. The 10K is bluer than the 14s, which is counterintuitive to what you would think. Color rendering index, not used quite as much. Generally, natural sunlight has a CRI of 100. Most decent bulbs have a CRI of greater than 90. Again, CRI does not denote any specific spectral curve. This is used extensively in the textiles and jewelry industry. You can't compare a diamond, say a white diamond and a pink light, say, hey, this is a pink diamond, it's worth more. No, it has to be kept under a specific quality of light. All that. Now, I've got to turn myself. We're going to switch gears. We're going from quality of light, the spectral curves of the light, into quantity of light. Generally, we are measuring photosynthetic active radiation. People call this FAR. It's a quantity of radiation, the light visible spectrum that zooxanthellae could potentially use in photosynthesis. The units of measures are either microeinsteins or micromoles per square meter per second. Now, from another research paper, I've just give everybody an idea of how much PAR is on a natural coral reef. I've outlined it here. At the surface, we've got almost 2,300 PAR. With a map, this is of course at noon on a regular summer day and so on. You're on 2,200 to 2,530.
This John.
That's why John said.
This study was actually done in Jamaica, and it can vary from localities around the world depending on the zenith of the sun and so on. But 16 feet looking, 573 to 633, 32 feet down, 3 to 350, and 64, 183 to 200. So you can see, and this is actually one of the lower estimates I've seen.
You try to emulate that in yours.
Yes, how did you?
Line up.
Ideally, yes, but the technicalities of that will be presented at the pigment discussion. Any questions so far? Anybody have any ideas or questions?
So why does everybody set up their tanks? I mean, this is pretty standard. 400 at the top, 50 at the bottom is pretty much where everybody kind of sits.
The discussion of pigments will yield a new idea on how to do this.
Oh, it's going 24 miles an hour right now.
Yeah, I forgot the balls.
Put the camera on the horse. We're gonna ask, who was that guy? Steve.
Okay.
Steve, look at something else.
Now, lumen outputs. The amount of light each bulb type produces. Power compacts, 55 watt, 4100 lumens, 96 watt, 8100 lumens, and a 65 watt actinic. No one measures actinics with lumen output. It's based on how the human eye perceives color. Human eye does not perceive blue light at all. Now, these numbers here are how efficient the bulbs are. You simply get this by dividing the lumens by the watts, and this gives you the lumens per watt efficiency. Okay? So going down to the T5s, T5s has 1700 lumens. The 39 watt has 3200. The 54 watt, which is very commonly used, has 4450. The 80 watt, you don't see that many of, 6150. Now, we want to do a comparison. Contrary to the popular perception in the industry, in our industry, is that the T5s have a dramatically higher output than the PCs. Unfortunately, that's not true. There's a slight improvement, but not dramatic. This is a 55 watt PC versus a 54 watt T5. We got 4100 lumens and 4450. If you bump this up to 65 watts with the same efficiency, you're going to exceed the lumen output of a 54 watt T5. So a standard PC, 65 watt is about this much, and this is a 48-inch T5. So the two are essentially equal if we're talking about 10K in output. All other things being equal, reflectors and surface and so on. Okay?
I think the thing right, everybody got on the whole kick on the T5 thing, just that they were narrower and you're able to line them up more than if you have one trying to line up PCs, your fixture would be
They'd be wider, but you use less of them because you have the same number of output. If you have a shorter tank other than 48 inches, then the PCs are the better way to go because I can now get the same lumen output with the 65 than I did with the same as the T5. Also, if you go to a 96 watt PC, I have almost twice the lumens as a 54 watt T5 in the shorter space. So that's an example. Now,
So if they're so comparable, what drove the popularity of the T5?
marketing.
They know what they're doing.
Metal halides, we jump up dramatically here in lumen output. These are averages. 150 watt has 11,000 lumens, 15,000, 18,000. 400 watt metal halide has 32,000 lumens. Again, we can still do the same efficiency, so you can get an idea how efficient the bulbs are.
that's what your build's going to look like.
Yeah. Now, a year and a half ago when I gave a seminar, this was pretty much all you could get out of the LEDs. At the time, we were looking at the nanotuners with the 700 milliamp driver. You could get 190 lumens out of 3 watts, or about 95 watts a lumen, or a bulb, I should say. And then you're looking at 31 lumens a watt and 63 lumens a watt. Comparing it to the rest of these, it's going to take a whole bunch of these to make up for even a 150 watt metal halide. This is why the early LEDs had 100 emitters in the fixture just to get the the output of it. This has changed rather dramatically just in a year and a half. It's really quite stunning how much output they've been able to crank out of these LEDs just in a year and a half. Some of the LEDs are rating anywhere from 80 lumens a watt, this is power for 400, to as high as 160 lumens a watt, which is phenomenal. There are some concerns, and we'll discuss those a bit later. So we've seen a massive jump up in output with the LEDs, but until Tesla came out with theirs, the curve hadn't changed much. Let's see. Okay, this is going to conclude this portion of the quantity and quality lecture. Do we have any other questions on quantity or quality?
Most of them can be discussed in here.
Yeah.
So if I have 24 3-watt LEDs at 85 lumens, then
If this is just a generalized, you'd have to call the company and find out exactly how many lumens per watt it produces.
That's driving into like 700 miles.
Yeah. Switch gears here. Say. Now, a much more interesting subject. Introduction to pigments, photoadaptation, and coral color. This is a field that is not really discussed terribly extensively in the industry, so I'm going to give you the basic introduction, how to understand this, and how this applies to our lighting sources. The first step is, I don't know if we have any beginners here. I'll just give a quick review. Inside the coral is a symbiotic algae called zooxanthellae. And these zooxanthellae, through photosynthesis, helps to feed our corals, simple sugars and lipids. So we're going to zoom in on the zooxanthellae, and we're going to look at their photosynthetic pigments. This is the collection apparatus of light for the zooxanthellae. And we have several different pigments that absorb lights of specific color or colors. And what these pigments do is they funnel the light energy into the photosynthetic machinery, which drives photosynthesis. So we'll just give a quick review of how these work. Chlorophyll A, which is the most common, this is what colors our plants and grass green. Why does it color our leaves and lawn green? Is that it's the one color chlorophyll doesn't absorb as green, so it's reflected back to the human eye as green. That's why Steve's shirt appears red. The pigments in the shirt absorb all the other colors but red, and red is reflected back. Okay. Chlorophyll, and the two chlorophylls are kind of unique in that they have two absorption peaks, two areas of light color that they will absorb. One's in the blue and one's in the red. The color to the human eye of chlorophyll A is basically green or blue-green. Chlorophyll C, again, a blue and a red absorption, is kind of a light green color. Pyridine is phenomenally important. It forms complexes with the chlorophyll. It's just additional solar panels to funnel more light into photosynthetic machinery. Its absorption is basically blue light, 475. Now the color to the human eye is brick red. Neopyridine, again, a different shade of blue. To the human eye, there's pale yellow. Dimethylxanthin, different shades of violet and blue, appears yellow to the human eye. Diadenosxanthin, similar situation in yellow. And beta-carotene, which is found in carrots, absorbs light in the different shades of blue and appears orange. Now, theoretically, it would be possible to manipulate artificial lighting sources to generate some color from our zooxanthellae, but this is generally not how it happens. The average color for this for the zooxanthellae is brown to light brown colors, simply because you're mixing these two pigments together, chlorophyll and parabennin. This is brick red and green. Okay, painters, what color do you get when you mix red paint and green paint? You get brown paint. And this is why the zooxanthellae typically have a brownish color. Any questions so far? Yes, sir.
I'm just curious. If I understand it, like, it's okay, so the algae absorbs a certain spectrum.
Yes.
And so we're seeing when it's reflecting back.
Correct.
It hasn't absorbed.
It has
So on here, you showed 1, 2, 3, 4 things that absorb blue light.
Correct.
But to our eyes, some is red, some is yellow, some is
Correct.
orange.
That's what's reflected.
Right. So how does something that's sucking in blue look red, and something that's sucking in blue looks yellow, and something that's sucking in blue looks orange to our eyes?
Well, it's a big chlorophyll. It's sucking up blue and red light, but it
so it's not
reflects
a
green.
pure, it's not a pure thing. So you mix them and you get a different reflection.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay. All right. So we have inside the coral, we have the zooxanthellae. We have a laundry list of pigments or solar panels that absorbs different colors of light, and this fuels our photosynthesis. Now, the next step is to look at how the corals are colored. Again, the corals generally don't, hopefully not colored by the zooxanthellae themselves, because we'd be stuck with nothing but brown corals, which nobody wants. So there's a bunch of pigments. Let me back up a little bit. To give you an idea, of how these photosynthetic pigments function in relation to how the coral grows and how the pigments increase in concentration or decrease, a very interesting experiment was done by Joe York and Kinsey several years ago. And what they did is they took 2 species of coral and they subjected them to different colors of light. They took Monopora and Pseudopora. We have a lens of blue light, white light, which is just ambient light, green, and red light. And they adjusted the PAR on each of the lenses to be sure we have the same amount of light going to each piece. So after about 2 to 4 months, they looked at the corals, looked at the growth rates. By the way, they checked the growth by dyeing the coral skeleton red, and any new growth turned up as white, and that's how they measured it. So if we look at the Monopora and Pseudopora, we'll do the Monopora first. Under blue light, we got 3.55 growth. Under the white light, 3.51. Green, we're diminishing, and red is quite poor. The Pseudopora, very similar trend, 1.3, 0.9, 2.4, and almost non-existent. Again, blue, white, green, and red, the effects of it. They also dissected the corals and they extracted the pigments out of each of the corals and took a look and see how they responded to the light the light regime up here. So we have the Monopora. The concentration of chlorophyll was highest under blue, a little less under white, poor under green, and almost a third under red. The Pseudopora, similar situation. We had a little better performance with the white than the blue and the Pseudopora, but the same trend: green poorer and red even poorer than that. Any questions on this experiment?
So higher concentrations of the chlorophyll at the bottom
Yes.
did equate out to better growth.
Yes, it did. If you look at these numbers here, these numbers, the Monopora 7.39 concentration of chlorophyll.
Sorry, in the different corals. So as an example.
Oh, amongst the different corals, there is some minor differences. The Pseudopora, this one's particularly high light growing coral, so it didn't grow as well under the lower light levels that they ran the experiment at. But you can see the trend is very quite clear. Blue and white gave the best, the green and the red gave the poorest results.
Which is why companies are doing the blue and white and the royal.
Yes, to an extent. Just as a quick reminder, all those pigments that I listed, the general color is blue. The photosynthesis functions primarily under blue with all those pigments, with the exception of the chlorophyll, so take a little bit of red.
I'm with you so far.
Okay, good.
Keep going.
So what you did say, if I understand correctly just now, is those peaks that absorbing that are causing our eyes to see certain things, those are the peaks that they're absorbing for the use of producing the energy for the corals.
Generally the blue light, yes. Okay, now we get to the part where
That's right.
our corals have many, many different colors. And these are imparted to them by these pigments. Blues, purples, pinks, orange, reds, yellows. These are all pigments that are produced by the coral to essentially shield them from excess light. Next. These pigments, very importantly, are non-photosynthetic. These do not drive any photosynthetic light energy to the zooxanthellae directly. They are used to protect the coral from UV damage. So they put up shields to prevent UV damage. They also protect coral from excess light that is photosynthetically usable and light that is non-photosynthetically usable. It is possible to generate so much blue light that you could theoretically damage the coral. So there are actually pigments in that scenario that will be put up to prevent damage from occurring. Okay.
Mark, do you
Yes.
mean damage as in color changing or
No, death damage.
death damage?
Yeah. Okay, now we get into the specific coral pigments themselves. There is an enormous laundry list of pigments. I'm not going to go into each individual one. I'm going to save that for another lecture, because we'd be here for a long time. But I do want to pick out a few, just to give you an idea how they function. We have the non-fluorescent pigments. These are called chromoproteins. And this particular chromoprotein absorbs yellow, green, and orange light. Unfortunately, the reference I was looking at didn't say what color appears to the human eye, other than one reference said it's pink. So it's absorbing this color and reflecting another color, just like the chlorophylls. Then we get into the very interesting pigments. These are called fluorescing pigments. And a fluorescent pigment has a unique ability. We have an incoming color of light hitting the pigment, and then out comes a different color of light, and that's the light that you see. So one color coming in, another color coming out. I'm going to take a couple of them just to give you an idea. Red fluorescing protein, incoming light, which is yellow, is 572. It emits an orange color, 590. Some of the bacilloporins, this is kind of interesting. It absorbs ultraviolet light, and the light you see that comes out of the pigment is actually blue. This is one of the speculated examples where this pigment, although it doesn't directly enter into the photosynthetic process, the light that comes out can be caught by the zooxanthellae. Go, thank you! So you got the light coming in, the blue light comes out, and it just sort of ricochets off into the zooxanthellae, and they can use a small amount. But it's only found in deep water pools, apparently. Another good example, yellow fluorescing protein absorbs blue light, and the color that you see is going to be shades of green, yellow, and orange. Any questions on these? This giant laundry list isn't near complete. In each of these categories, there are different family members, which you could spend probably a whole lecture just on one pigment alone. So it's getting quite complex and quite involved. But the functions of all these is to protect the corals and to prevent UV damage. Other parameters that affect the coral pigments and the colors. These are other situations that will help to color our coral. Trace metals probably the next most interesting subject, and this you could spend a lot of time on itself. Trace metals are like iron, manganese, zinc, cobalt, ruthenium, vanadium, and so on. By manipulating the trace element concentrations in the water, you can affect the concentrations to some extent of some of these pigments. Problem is, this can get a little dangerous because these metals are quite toxic if they're overdosed. So if you proceed along this line, proceed with caution, add trace elements very cautiously and very slowly until you see the response in the corals. Temperature, obvious. The temperature range is too high or too low. The coral's not going to do well. It's not going to develop pigments. Water quality parameters, all the normal things, are calcium, alkaline pH, and so on, will all affect the corals. Nutrient loads is one that we've sort of expounded on the last couple of years. If your nitrate and phosphate's high, the zooxanthellae inside the corals go, food! And they start to grow and grow and grow, and then instead of having the pretty colors, all you're left with is the brown color of the zooxanthellae. And this is why the high nitrate and phosphate causes such undesirable colors. Now,
So then, Mark,
yes?
so then there's a fine line between the algae in the coral that needs to grow. Too much, it kind of chokes it out. We don't get the color. Too little, the coral actually dies. There's a fine line.
Yeah. It's all quite a balancing act.
Hundreds of dollars.
Okay. Before we continue,
Hey, Mark? Mark?
yes.
So with the nitrate and phosphates, I mean, what levels are we looking at to feed them before they get detrimental?
Well, if we looked at natural seawater, a study was done looking at 1,000 coral reefs, and they took an average of nitrate and phosphate. The average nitrate was about 0.25. The average phosphate was 0.13. So you want to probably stay in that ballpark if you can. Generally, my observations, less than 5 really keeps the coral pigmentation nice. Anything above 10 or 15, it starts to get a little dingy.
In regards to that, what do you think about this new wave of these NP pellets and all this kind of stuff?
That's
Keep those nitrates down.
Yeah, I'm using a similar situation here at the store. That's a whole other lecture.
All right.
All right. So we'll save that for another day. Okay. Before we get into the applications of artificial lighting to these pigments, I want to take just a brief sideline here. We've discussed pigments, how they absorb different colors of light. Anybody here happen to have heard of, I just forgot the name. Phycocyanide or allophycocyanide pigments? Any clue? No?
Steve?
Nope.
No? These pigments are very specific for absorbing red light. They pick up the red light in the 650 nanometer range. Okay. Guess where these are found? Cyanobacteria, our old friend the red slime algae. So the more red light that you produce in the system probably is not going to be helpful for you. So we get into the situation of why do we change bulbs? Fluorescent bulbs, metal halide bulbs, roughly annually. Tony, can you give me 2 reasons why we change bulbs?
Because its color spectrum changes.
Okay, 1 and
Pick someone else.
Mark needs more money.
It keeps certain people in business.
it's intensity. The primary reasons for changing the bulbs out roughly annually are a drop in intensity and a shift in spectrum. Shift in spectrum to what color? Tony?
Red and
Away from the blue.
green. Red and green.
Red and green.
Okay, most people assume it's just into a yellow-red spectrum. Okay. So the hobbyists have spent a whole bunch of money, they're hard-earned money, replacing bulbs so they're nice and bright and they're not shifted to red. So I find this astonishing that the hobbyist then goes out and they buy a red bulb. Particularly the T5 folks.
Here we go.
There's the T5.
Here it comes.
Order of the purple plus.
Oh man!
This is the KZ Fiji purple bulb, the T5 that everybody's just jumping all over. You can see we have this just hellacious, massive peak in the red here. And boy, this is actually a better terrestrial plant bulb because or chlorophyll A is more of a dominant pigment because this is pretty close to chlorophyll A absorption. But for our purposes, we don't need this at all. Okay? And for this one,
Now, when you said we don't need it,
correct.
we don't need it because it's not going to be beneficial to the coral?
Correct. Correct. Remember, this photosynthetically, only chlorophyll A and C2 can utilize a small amount of red light. The question is, and we'll get that very shortly, how much is a small amount? So when you have this gigantic, massive peak in the red, it's probably not going to be the best way to go.
But it's not killing the coral.
It may not kill the coral, but if you feed those phycocyanin and alpha-phycocyanin pigments that grow cyanobacteria, you can have a problem.
So
It's not a great idea.
what's interesting is that oil, blue, and neutral white on your three LEDs will
Yes.
produce somewhat of a purple spectrum. Or
Okay.
a purple appearance. I won't say
Yes,
spectrum
okay.
because I can't measure that.
Yes.
Is it getting into that same spectrum as these?
The crease,
If you mix a neutral white and royal blue, you see.
we'll see that very shortly. Okay.
Man.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, I'm just like, I do it all the time. No,
I'm gonna stop asking.
I've been doing it the whole time.
Okay. Okay, now, well, I want to get into applications. I want to get into applications of artificial light sources and these pigments. Over the years, I go down to the wholesales, I buy corals, and sometimes they just plain don't make it. And you're always wondering, why has that happened? And lots of hobbyists, exchanging corals between one another, even though the lighting systems are fairly comparable, or the lighting system that you got coral from is brighter than the lighting system you're putting in, and the coral still goes. Okay. So, why does this happen? The other things that you'll see with corals is that as you increase PAR, damage happens to the coral. Yet the overall amount of PAR really isn't that high. So again, why is this happening? And what I'd like to present to you is the following, is that these pigments that I've outlined have evolved under natural sunlight for millions of years, in fact tens of millions of years. And they have evolved to deal with this amount. If you look at the red end of the spectrum, or any other color for that matter, pick up the paper here, no more than this amount. When you exceed the amount found in natural sunlight, the pigments didn't evolve to handle gross amounts more. They may be handling a small amount more, but they're not going to be handling gross amounts more. So they fail. Once pigments fail, excess light gets in that can cause photoinhibition, which slows down photosynthesis, which slows coral growth, or causes photo damage and you lose the coral altogether. So, let me get you another graph here. So, what I was hoping to find, and surprisingly I was able to find one, what this researcher did, they took some known bulbs and they superimposed that graph over the natural sunlight graph. And now you can see where these excesses occur. So I'm going to hand this first one out. Oh, yeah. Oh, okay. Everybody got one? Good. Okay, our first bulb is the Ushio 10,000K 400 watt versus the Ocean. Now, a bit of a note, they basically enlarge this graph of the natural sunlight just so it's more easily seen. In this curve, they had to correlate the output with the output of the bulb. So all the natural sunlight are all these horizontal lines on the bottom of the graph. And then they also correlated output at different depths. for the bulbs. That's why we have the 1 meter, 5 meter, 10 meter, and so on. And then the different par values for the corresponding par values for the light. Now, if we take natural sunlight at the, what do they call it, 3 foot down, that's this one right here. You can see these absolutely hellacious peaks of different colors, far exceeding natural sunlight. So, if you're a pigment and you've evolved for tens of millions of years under the top curve, you're going to come up to, say, this peak right here, which is all yellow, and you're going to look at that giant mountain of light and going, forget it, I'm not. There's just no way I'm going to do that. It won't be able to handle it. It will likely not be able to protect the coral, and these damage may occur. So this is just one of the bulbs that they tested. So I got to thinking, what if you can come up with a bulb that is even more closely representative of natural sunlight without the massive peaks? Over the years, I've always tried to find a curve of a bulb that was at least, close to this. I was always fairly happy with, simulating a curve that wasn't dramatically different. Now it may not look like it's good enough. Because of this excess peaks in so many of the bulbs, it may be actually causing damage to the corals when you start to turn up the par. This is why when you switch lighting sources, the par might be the same, but the spectrum's different. It has a big peak of another color, and the coral's gone. So I was sort of searching for a better bulb. What bulb would be out there that simulates natural sunlight more closely? And I got a clue from one of my wholesalers. This wholesaler is where I get all my stonies from, and they have a spectacular stony tank. It's 450 gallons. They have all the mother colonies in it, and they have 4,000 watts of metal halide over top. An unbelievable amount of light. And in the bottom, 25% of this tank are some monocorals. They have some sunset monies and some Superman monies and some Setosa. Corals that you wouldn't think would be able to ever tolerate that much light. I'm going, how is this possible? You got 4,000 watts of this tank, and the monopores are spectacular. The pigments are vibrant. They're growing like crazy. I'm going, what kind of bulbs are these guys using? So I'm going to hand out the next. Next list. Oh, have one. This one. Everybody got one? Okay. They're using the radium, actually 1,000 watt 20K bulb. Struck by saying, when I heard the word 20K, some old memories came back of a 20-year-old 20K bulb which looked like tiny bowl toilet water. It was just so hideously blue that my brain said, ignore anything that says 20K. I'm ignoring my own advice, never use color temperature to judge a bulb. Always look at the spectrum. Okay. So, if we look at this bulb, we get a better idea why the corals are doing so well under that high intense light. Again, the very top horizontal line is natural sunlight at 1 meter or 3 feet. The curve of the bulb is, we do have a one large peak in the blue end of the spectrum, but all the other peaks are well within tolerance of that natural sunlight. So this bulb simulates natural sunlight, with the exception of the blue end, the best of anything else I've seen so far. With the exception now, just reviewing, we'll go back to that, the Cussel is also very similar to it. Any questions on this? Yes?
What's the valve that they're using to run their
I'm sorry, I don't know. I have to go back and ask.
I know sometimes some valves are more efficient at running.
Yeah, the valves would be very important for running the bulbs. But my my intuition now is that as this information on pigmentation becomes more mainstream, and a lot of this information is only 3 years old now, as this becomes more mainstream into the hobby, I think we're going to see a lot more bulbs generated to do what radium's doing now, instead of all these crazy peaks. I mean, even the T5, I'm sorry it's so small, but you can see all the great little spikes all over the place. Now, under low light conditions, that may not be significant, but as you turn up the par, the number of bulbs, that could be a problem. And up until now, I didn't really think that could be a problem, but it certainly could be a problem with high enough par. The pigments aren't designed to handle that quantity of any particular color. They just didn't evolve that way. Okay.
But what's the answer to why, I mean, you're still 4, 5, 10, 12 times
Oh yeah.
the lethal amount of blue light.
Blue.
Why is it?
The pigments, first, the intensity of blue light may not be sufficient yet to start causing damage. Two, that end of the spectrum has probably the most amount of pigments that shield. So, like I said, it's not impossible. I still think there's a possibility. It may be causing some damage that I can't even perceive yet. But it is possible, theoretically, to overblue the tank. You want to create, again,
So do you think running solid blues for half an hour before?
solid blues is not going to be a problem because you're not going to have the intensity required to cause any damage. With the pigments, generally, when you're running the blue-green into the spectrum, there's one pigment called green fluorescent pigment, which absorbs that blue-green light. And this is why all the corals that are kept under typically more actinic tend to be that neon green color, because that's the pigment that absorbs that, or shields that type of color light.
Oh, it's shield. Wow. Now, did you guys have earlier in the industry issues with not having blue light? Was the
Oh
problem?
yes,
And then
just as a note, going to the 50s, 60s, and early 70s, scientists couldn't keep corals in captivity to run their experiments for any length of time. And it wasn't until about the mid-70s where they're looking at the zooxanthellae and say, pigments, they use blue light. We don't have any blue light. There were no bulbs for blue light. They happened to find a bulb, interesting enough. It was designed to treat newborn infants with jaundice. It's called an actinic bulb. The actinic was never designed for the industry. It was designed as a medical bulb to treat newborn infants with jaundice. It'd be pretty cool to go into a nursery with a bunch of babies with jaundice and see them all live with it.
Unless it's your kid. But yeah. They're not so cool.
So that's why it revolutionized this industry. I saw my first actinic January of '85. One of the wholesalers does a lot of traveling to Germany, and he happened to bring back the first actinics, and that's where we started the whole process. Yeah. Okay. I want to get any questions at this point? I'm trying to make it as clear as I can. I know it's kind of technical and kind of complicated. Now that we've had our discussions of pigments and what colors are usable and what the pigments can do, we can go back and take a look at our curves. If we look at the crease or the orphic, where a normal curve would be, coming way, way, way down here, we have rather large, expansive outputs of the green, yellow, the yellow, and the orange. These amounts of the curves, photosynthetically speaking, are of little use, if any use whatsoever. So you're burning electricity for nothing. Second, again, they haven't done this yet. This is a fairly new study. I wish somebody would do this, is to superimpose these curves on top of the natural sunlight like they've done. You'd probably see a very similar situation. The natural sunlight would be way down here, and now we have massive quantities of yellow, orange, and red that the pigments and the corals may not be able to use. This is why I've talked to some of my customers with some of the white LEDs and said every time you turn it up, the corals go. Okay. Basically the same argument for the orphic. Going down to the Kessel, on the other hand, if you look at the radium 20K, curve, and the Kessel, we're much closer. We have a bit of a hump here, but again, we don't know for sure, but if we superimpose that natural sunlight curve, it's going to be much closer than certainly either of these. Kessel obviously has done their homework. They've looked at the pigments, they know what they can absorb, they know what they can take, and they have created this bulb with photosynthesis and pigmentation in mind. If you go through the literature, nowhere have I found anywhere where Cree company themselves have stated, we have made this bulb specifically for the aquarium industry and specifically for growing coral. Nowhere have they said that.
Well, isn't there a huge patent issue going on with LEDs anyways?
Yeah, so
if they say Aquarium on them, then
bend over a table.
25% for just saying the word
Aquarium. So they made no claims. So what's happened is the industry has commandeered a high quality, long lasting, well made, off the rack bulb to put into all these systems. Okay. Any questions?
He's looking at you.
Okay.
I'm listening.
Okay.
Now, I have a question.
Yes.
Why, I hate to call you out, AJ. AJ has a beautiful tank, and everything grows like it's on crack cocaine. And he's running Cree LEDs. Why is everything...
We're going to get to that.
Oh.
AJ, you still using those Evolution?
No.
No.
I'm completely Cree. It's all, I built it myself.
100% Cree. What's the ratio of blues to white?
1-to-1.
So it's 50-50. Okay.
But I have my white style down a little bit.
Yeah. The more you turn up the whites, the more this is going to be prevalent, and the more you're going to get. Okay. Now.
Sorry. So AJ doesn't have that hump because he turns it down.
And that's why I'm listening, but that's what I'm saying, you know, you can turn and you by having each color on a separate thing, and you turn down.
Okay, we're going to get to that right now.
And you're going to lose some par.
But
then you'll lose par.
You're still pumping par. You're still...
You really want it.
Well, no, because the reds aren't really pumping any par anyway.
But you don't need that much par.
If you keep the blues and the whites where they're supposed to be. I'm just hypothetically
Take it over.
Just flip it.
We get this argument once a week, every week with Marc.
The corals may be able to adapt somewhat to some of this, but as you turn up the par, they may not be able to handle it. By keeping the par levels low, I'll give you a sneak peek into the next lecture with the pigments. The pigments that color these corals can utilize much more light than what we're giving them. The studies are looking at 400 to 700 par to start for most of the corals, and 700 to 1200 par for the stonies.
So it's basically the color spectrum that's killing them is the reason why, right?
Possibly,
it's
yes.
the spectrum that's killing them. It's not the par that's killing them. It's
Correct.
the spectrum.
Correct.
You're just shooting them so hard with different colors that they're not used to.
Okay, so maybe I should bring this up first. There's a difference between par and PER. PER is photosynthetically usable radiation, and PAR is simply photosynthetically active radiation. But active to what? Photosynthetic sponge, alfalfa, banana plants, what? Yes?
But then doesn't it, I know Reef LEDs finding the different bins are giving them different spectrums as well too. So depending on the bin you get your LEDs out of, you could have a different curve completely than what
very
was
likely,
tested.
Yeah, I'd be very cautious with that. I want to ask the manufacturer, what exactly am I buying? Am I buying a big enough poke? Am I buying something?
Yeah, because they have like the premiums, the regulars,
yeah.
And I mean there's a huge difference in color.
But never go by what the manufacturer says, make them, force them, I want to see a curve. Because they'll lie through their teeth. Okay, now we get on to the other LED which has become all the rage here, is the Radiant X30. Let me get my sheet in. Now, okay, first thing I've done, I've broken down the spectrums of each of the lights that are available. This particular LED has 5-channel programmable, so you can adjust the different colors. So just so you can see what we're doing, we have, this is the royal blue, the green, the Cree green, and this is an Osmond hyper red. This is the XPG curve, which is identical to the previous curve. Okay, so I have two questions with this. First, the press release says, RGB LED configuration allows infinite color possibility. And it also says fully adjustable for intensity and color and appeal. Okay. Now, two things. First, and I didn't find it in this press release, I couldn't find it anywhere else. Does this unit has some sort of preset settings that says setting number 1 produces curve number 1?
I don't know about curves, but I know they have. They went according to like 20K, 14. I don't know how in depth they went, but you can select like.
Okay,
that.
so you
Yeah,
can.
it goes from 5 to 20. They have 6 automatic settings.
Okay, good. Okay, that helps somewhat. Now, do they have the curves published for the 5 to 20?
Not for each individual thing.
Okay, that you need to know before you buy.
Yeah.
Okay. The other thing is, if
What?
You keep your receipt.
Oh yeah, I'm good. It's a free order.
if you don't
They're not even
use,
out yet.
if you do not use the presets, then you'll be left. You're playing mad scientist with your corals.
Exactly.
Take this, my corals. No, master, no. Right. So
You got that on video?
You have,
All right,
you would have absolutely no idea, no clue whatsoever. what you're doing.
Exactly.
So you easily create MOs. Okay. So if you have presets, my suggestion is make the company provide you the curves of each preset before you invest that kind of money. Yes, sir.
Still, with all those freaking spikes, you don't want all those spikes anyway.
Well,
Correct.
you can tone them down.
The idea behind this particular module is you're supposed to be able to adjust them all.
Yeah, but you can't, you wouldn't know what you're adjusting.
Exactly. That's
You
my
wouldn't
point.
know what's peaking and what's not.
Right.
So your spectrum up top is a spectrum they published for you.
This is, oh, I can just see the marketing guys now going, hey Fred,
That's
what
supposed to
colors
be
you want to
at 100% of all of them.
Obviously,
At the
less
highest.
whites and less greens than there are blues and
It
whites.
can't be 100%.
That's what they're saying.
Well, yeah. Well, this, where's this? You know, this
Well,
and this
yeah,
is
that's
not
my
the same.
question. They must
Yeah.
have like very little reds compared to the whites and blues.
Oh yeah, there's
So
only
this would have to be
there's
turned
only 2
down.
per
Okay.
cluster.
We're also missing a quarter of this hump here. So, like I said, I can just see the marketing guys going, hey Fred, what curve do you want to publish? Not that one, not this one, that one. And arbitrarily came up with a curve to put on that.
But in theory,
Yeah.
you know, talk about
Yeah.
Tesla, if you're running 50-50, if you blend the colors, you're going to change your spec.
You bet. You will, but to what?
No, I get you.
Yeah.
I'm with you. I'm just trying to think this through. Okay.
Mark, I'm
But so,
I'm sorry, Mark. What instrument would you put in your, I mean, let's say you had the money and you really wanted it.
Uh-huh.
What instrument could you put in your tank that would actually show you where these are?
Now that's a spectrophotometer. It spits out a spectral curve. That was my next question with the XR30.
Did you get one? Can I borrow it?
No.
Does it come with a spectrum? No. Lightborn used to make them. It's a high-end light meter and spectrophotometer. We're talking probably $2,000 to start.
now we don't.
No problem.
Cancel the reef swap. Here we go.
Better buy 2 of them.
Mark, if we can't rely on the published curve of Radion or whatever, how can we rely on the published curve of Kessel?
Well, no, this is a made-up curve, or this is one of a million possibilities of manufacture. So it's adjustable. The others have a set curve which you can't change.
So they can publish that and be right. Because,
Yeah.
oh, well, you just didn't have
Yeah, all you gotta do is
That's what we
play with
came
it.
up with.
Yeah.
But in reality, as hobbyists in technology, we're at mercy to whatever they say.
That's why you got to do your homework and be sure that companies are keeping true to their word.
With the Kessel 20K, that thing is like a blue nightlight. I mean,
Yeah.
it is solid
It's
blue.
solid. It's basically.
It basically has one spike, and then it probably matches your natural sunlight the best. But
Not
to
the
look
20,
at
the 15, which is the one, or the 10 is one I
15 is still pretty blue.
Yeah.
The 10K is pretty light.
Yeah. Well, I got a 10. We're going to show it to you here in just a minute.
Yeah.
And
I got
had it
to
on
know
my
we're doing because I'm looking forward to that.
No,
Okay.
we
Now,
ran par tests.
we
brought over
just
the Kessel to mine,
discussed about
ran
the
them against the
pigments
Reef Brights
and
and the
the
T5s.
green and the red, which you highlighted there, are not going to
Photosynthetic.
be used
Correct.
for the
Photosynthesis.
Yeah, we mixed it with some
Okay.
of our blues and like some stuff.
From what I understand
No span.
is that, and of
No,
course you're
zero.
going to correct me,
It's like a
but
foot by foot.
in the areas where they do have it, they have the
Yes.
right
What I mean,
areas
Yeah.
here.
Yeah.
But the red and the green, from what I understand, are for our visual of the corals. For our eyes to see.
Yeah, but
So as long as they're not hurting the coral or killing the coral,
correct.
then
And then,
we should be all
in
right.
order to do that, we have to lower these peaks back down to natural sunlight levels. Okay.
So why a fixture that has these colors, these two added colors, versus, and I asked you, well, do you like the aqua illuminations, which don't have those, and you still said no.
Because the white curve is identical to the previous curves.
It's
Or
still,
worse.
they're still creeps.
They're,
They're S and Ls.
they're that same basic curve.
Yeah.
You got that big.
You have the big peak.
Yeah, they got
It's
the
got
big
the
old
hump
hump.
on the end.
Well, here it is right here.
Yeah.
This is the tree. And what was interesting about this curve, like I said, we're missing this part of the curve
Yeah.
up here. So, you know, why have it if we're going to turn it all the way down?
Depending on the depth of the hole or the you know, the bar or whatever, the burning that could be damaging. And
Correct. Correct. So the idea is to sum it all up, we want light as close to natural sunlight as we possibly can get without exceeding any particular color to generate the correct health and wealth of the corals. The other situation is, this is the new frontier. How do we color the corals? How do we develop these pigments to get the brightest maximum color out of the corals we possibly can? And that's looking at natural sunlight, seeing what they can tolerate. It is much more rewarding and much more sophisticated and elegant and much more interesting to try to develop these pigments naturally, their natural colors, than simply taking a colored light bulb and shining over top of the corals, which could be damaging. Okay. Let's see. Do you have any other questions? I forgot. Just I'm going to pass these out. I brought my Reef.
Study my future goal.
I'll take it. He's got a secret Marc contract with Pietroforte. I seriously have a contract that bounces a light. Really? Hey Brent, he's just like, that's why you only run one.
So Marc,
I didn't get one of those.
how deep are these
Are
LEDs?
you get one? No, it doesn't say.
How far down can you go?
Hey, don't.
Can they LED go?
I'm hating on you.
It's probably not significant because you're going to have to go down more than 3 or 4 feet before you start to get any attenuation of light. So basically what you see from the curve is what you're going to pretty much get, unless you've got a ridiculous result.
Well, this is not it.
I just want to offer this real quick.
No, it's where you turn it up to. This is the plasma.
This is plasma.
I've actually talked to this company
Yeah.
and had them, they've actually quoted me on the fixture and everything.
Mhm.
I guess they use a lot of their lights, that's what they use up at Monterey Bay Aquarium.
Yes.
Yeah, I talked to them, but I didn't have a,
All right, curve.
Yeah.
John Searcy's usually here. I don't know how to John today, but he owns one of these bulbs. It's a very interesting type of lighting. Depending on how much light, how much electrical energy you put into the light, you get a different curve. So the more energy you get, the higher curve, the lower energy you get, the lower curve.
1100 for both.
They also produce an enormous amount of light. You're looking at 50,000 lumens out of the 290 watt unit. So you're looking at 170 lumens a watt, some type of a thing.
John has his like 5 feet up
Yeah.
in the air.
he actually, he isn't that bad.
What's interesting, the company, Luxem just come out with a 450 watt version. So if you have visions of turning your swimming pool into a reef tank, you got the light for it.
So,
Yes.
the only reason why I want to ask about this is because I've actually been talking back and forth with Lex about getting one of their
Yes.
fixtures. With the ability to adjust the brightness of
Yes.
it, isn't that
one of the best ways to match natural sunlight is through one of these lights?
Well, if you look at the curve closely, it's not bad. But
I mean, it's peaking a little bit in the
yeah,
greens,
it's
but-
got a little more yellow. When I first saw this, before I did my research on the pigments, I said, it's very reasonable. But as I got more information for these pigments, how they handle the light, this end of the spectrum on the right-hand side is probably a little tall. And what's interesting, John originally started out with 100% or pretty close to 100%. And the color of the corals wasn't as nice as what you'd like. So now he's turned them down to 50%, which is going to be a curve down in here. Now he said his colors are coming back up again. Now this fits into this situation where if I got this horrific amount of excess yellow light, the pigments go, forget it, I can't deal with it. And the corals, perhaps suffering from photo damage.
So by turning it down, you're losing par, right?
You bet. You're losing par, but you're changing the spectrum as well.
So what's better, the spectrum or par?
Well, obviously, getting back to PERT and PAR.
Teachers say you need all this.
Let me draw this very quickly.
You can lose par as long as you don't lose color.
Let's see, 600. Okay. Let's say we have a bulb that produces 1,500 par in the bottom of your tank, but it has a curve like this. 600, which is orange light. It's virtually worthless.
Okay.
So you say
what
that,
if we have the curve that you want, but then we don't have any par?
well, we're hoping as the technology develops, we'll have the par that we want with the spectrum that we want. Kessel's the first
Right
one.
now, spectrum, very important, and then
Right, and then the par.
then
Par,
we'll bring
right.
par second.
It's sort of, it's not helpful to have a huge, a bulb with a huge output and a really cruddy spectrum, because all you're doing is damaging the poles. Okay? Yes, go ahead.
So what's the par readings for the Kessels?
Unfortunately, that's the one black mark against them. They didn't publish any par numbers.
Back in the old day when they couldn't keep coral, it's because they could produce all this par but in the wrong spectrum.
Correct.
Right? So that's the problem they had, if I understand right, in the old days.
Correct.
And then with new
Sounds like the problem
technology,
they
we're
still have now.
just starting to, yeah. But as we go, then we should be able to produce more
Correct.
blue.
Hopefully, from what I hear, the word on the street, Kessel will be coming out with their 250 very soon.
That's what I'm talking about, because then you're gonna have the par with the spectrum.
With the spectrum, correct. And that's what I've been waiting for all along.
Well, with the par numbers, like let's say there's 600 par is sunlight at whatever depth. If you have, say, less par, 300 in your tank, but more per because your wavelength's more accurate or higher necessarily than natural sunlight, wouldn't you kind of balance out the par? And maybe
I don't think you're going to exceed natural sunlight.
Well, I don't mean exceed it, but I mean your nanometer range, you're going to be burning more than blue. So you're going to double how much more light you're getting from blue. So even though you have less par, you have more per in that
Correct.
spectrum.
Correct.
So you don't necessarily need that par as long as you're light from that spectrum.
Yeah, to a point. I mean, there's a cutoff.
You know what I'm saying? You're just not
Now, couldn't you buy this new plasma light, the 450 watt or whatever, and then dial it down to the correct spectrum to get more?
You bet.
And even this,
But that's, it's a lot of money.
It's actually not that bad. You'd be surprised.
For what?
well, how long is John's light? It seems like if you dialed it down into the 40-30% range,
Yeah,
you're getting pretty close.
pretty
to
close.
natural
Yeah, much
sunlight.
closer.
But then you're not spending so much money for the technology, and you're only using 30%.
Correct. The bulbs last 5 to 7 years.
Supposedly.
Oh, I didn't
Oh, I'm sorry.
No, I heard about these guys bringing in natural light.
Yes, the solar
Oh,
tubes.
yeah.
Yeah.
What do you think about that stuff?
Well, it's natural sunlight. You can't go wrong. Other than my mom's got one. It's not that bright, but I'm sure they make different models that would bring in more natural sunlight. Natural sunlight cannot be, at this point, cannot be beat.
But you'd have to add something to it, right?
Got what?
You'd have to add something like
I've seen
a
them
couple
add,
of blue bulbs or
stuff
something.
I have a
to it,
question,
yeah.
Marc.
What about like overcast, you know?
How long
Yeah,
do
you have to wait
Washington
when
people
the
should run their
sun
lives?
is over your house.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
We're just right there, perfect. So you're gonna have a great.
Equatorial planet Earth runs about 12 hours on, 12 hours off. And in captivity, 8-10 hours is
Really?
Okay.
I'm running 6.
That's a little light, but it's not.
Slacker.
If I start bumping up to 10, I start getting growth everywhere.
Yeah.
Dang.
Okay. Any other questions before I get to the? I'm going to show some of these lighting systems.
We ran some tests on the Kessels if people want to know. We ran
With what?
Reef Brights and T5s. And
Okay.
we ran that Kessel probably.
Yeah.
Is that Clinton's Kessel? Yeah. We ran that Kessel, and everybody's saying that it has a 2 foot by 2 foot radius.
Roughly.
Negative.
Yeah.
And,
Well, yeah.
that was the only part that it
Yeah.
wasn't even getting 50 par on my 22-inch tape halfway down. The par just wasn't there solo. My Reef Brights are 48 inches long, and it penetrates about 3/4 of the way down for 48 inches, and it had a lot wider. But mine doesn't have a color spectrum. So
Right.
for me to head those on my tank, I need like 5 of them.
Yeah, right now, until they come
Until
out
the
with
250
the 250 comes out.
Then I need 3, and I'm
Yeah.
and then,
All right, let me fire up.
and
I'm sorry,
if they're going 250 watts,
your name is Mike?
No.
If
They're
they're going-
saying they're equivalent to a 250 mil halide.
right, but are they going to mess with the color spectrum, giving it that much more power? Because less
Well,
power
really
from what
not.
we've
Yeah.
learned,
That's
less
what we're
power
doing.
puts you
Yeah.
into a better
More-
color spectrum, but gets you no
That was
color.
with plasma, that wasn't with LED.
Yeah.
So you don't think? I mean, turning it down is going to turn it down, right?
No,
There's
because
no way
that's-
to turn these
Yeah,
down.
you can't turn down the
Kessels are set.
They're already set.
Kessels are set.
You're done. What you get is what you get, what they say, that's what it is.
I think everybody's got their own idea of what color looks good in their tank.
Yeah.
You know, like
Okay, but the question
If
still
your Scully
remains.
starts
I know
dying,
that
let
we
me know.
covered,
Say
that
yes.
stuff. Please continue to do that.
Save it for
Um,
your claim too.
why is there such success with LEDs that are green?
Well,
They're still
there's
growing.
success and then there's some success. We're talking about accentuating these pigments to the maximum potential. You may not be able to do that as you turn up the volume on these tree bulbs.
Okay, but at the 100% where they said that they're driven, we're not talking about going any higher, then it's that curve. So
No,
it's not
Mark.
going to go any higher, or it's not going to change from there.
But Mark, also, wouldn't it matter the type of coral, because different corals are using different pigments and they have different, so
They'll have different spectral requirements
Right.
depending on depth. And
Right.
these pigments
Yeah.
evolve at different depths
You
as
could
well.
put some coral in an LED tank that would do better than in another tank, just because of the way they're making it.
If you had the same spectrum, it would probably be the same success.
Right.
If you have one spectrum vastly different than another,
Right.
yeah. But my comment to you is, why do it? I mean, we already know the pigments can't tolerate that. Why do it?
I don't know. I can't answer that, but we're all doing it.
Yeah, that's true.
We're all doing it.
We didn't know.
So, I mean,
I didn't know.
you know.
Well,
Good
step it up a notch, go to the next level.
Put a hole in the roof, that's all.
Of coral keep. I mean, yeah, in '85 I had metal halides that were just, ridiculously colored, and it kind of works. Or some things might do very well, and other things don't do well at all. But we're trying to get more consistency and more color out of the corals, and that's by using more of a natural sunlight color.
That's why. Is that why the radios are able to interchangeable LEDs?
I'm sorry?
You can change out the LEDs on the radios, can't you?